All right, welcome back to Mung Bean Soup for the Soul. This is reading number 5 from the Microbe Factor by Dr. Hiromi Shinya, number one endoscopic surgeon in the world, voted on by his peers, co-inventor of the colonoscopy, performed over 370,000 colonoscopies. In the last reading, we talked about the gift of microorganisms, how the various bacteria in your intestinal tract 20% are beneficial, 30% are harmful, and there's 50% that you determine if they're going to go good or bad. And you want a balance, of getting them good. And so in this next chapter, in this next section, I should say, we're going to talk about it. But in the first, we got cut off in the last couple of paragraphs of the gift of microorganisms. So I'm going to read that first. Actually, my segregation of intestinal bacteria into beneficial and harmful is for descriptive convenience only. Remember, the majority of bacteria that inhabit human intestines are bacteria in the gray zone, intermediate bacteria, neither good nor bad. They will become either beneficial or harmful when triggered by a slight change in the environment. The real swing voters, then, is you. How do you support beneficial bacteria in your intestines in order to live a healthy life? Health is not a matter of destroying all the harmful bacteria in your intestines, but of living and eating in a way that keeps the intermediate bacteria from going bad. One way to do this is by eating fermented foods, and this section is on fermentation. Microbes cause food to spoil, but they also can be used as preservatives, and people learned to do this very early in human history, using bacteria for fermentation. Fermented foods and drink are found in dietary cultures around the world. Lactobacillus is a typical beneficial bacteria in human intestines. It is also the bacteria necessary for fermenting yogurt and cheese and for making Japanese miso, which is soybean paste. It's also used for soy sauce, pickles, and vinegar. Speaking of soy sauce, I am studying Spanish, and soy sauce is I am sauce. That's just a little joke. Through all these foods, although all these foods are fermented using the same lactobacillus group, there's a big difference in the yogurt and cheese are derived from milk from animals, while miso paste and soy sauce are derived from plants. The lactobacillus is the vinegar used in making sauerkraut produces lactic acid, which inhibits the growth of other microorganisms. In the preparation of miso and soy sauce, not only lactobacillus, but also various microorganisms such as koji and yeast bacillus are used. Among the soybean group, natto made by Natto-bacillus is a familiar Japanese fermented food, although it may not be to everyone's taste. These and other fermentation processes add nutrients and make foods better tasting and easier to digest. Beyond the use of fermentation to preserve our foods, fermented foods is good for our health. To understand this, let's go through the process of fermentation. Glucose, protein, and carbohydrates in food are broken down by microorganisms during the fermentation process, creating components beneficial for the human body. The intestines, the part of the body which I specialize in, and when I say I mean Dr. Hiromi Shinya, especially benefit from fermented foods as they help beneficial bacteria to promulgate in the intestines. For example, when lactobacillus, which is a typical beneficial bacterium, reaches the intestines, the pH or potential hydrogen, that is abbreviation for, instead of the intestine turns acidic, thus inhibiting the promulgation of bacteria unable to survive in an acidic environment. Many of these bacteria are hazardous. They produce humic substances such as ammonia and hydrogen sulfide, and therefore they are generally referred to as harmful bacteria. By the increased activities of beneficial bacteria, these harmful bacteria lose their power and the environment in the intestinal tract improves. The activities of microorganisms are also a vital part of the relationship between the intestines and our immune function. There are various immune cells such as macrophage, lymphocyte cells, and neutrophils working in the intestinal tract. They protect the body from pathogens that you may have ingested. Beneficial bacteria such as lactobacillus activate the immune cells. This is why our immunity to disease is compromised when the intestines are in poor condition. Two-thirds of the immune cells in our body are concentrated in the intestines. Two-thirds of our immune cells in our body are concentrated in the intestines, which are the most important part of the digestive tract. While the intestinal environment is disrupted and in poor condition, the problem goes far beyond the health of intestines. If nothing is done to improve the intestinal health, the immune power and the life of energy of a person will be depleted, making them prone to cancers, life-related diseases, infectious diseases, allergy-related disorders, and various other problems. Yeah, it's important to keep those intestines in shape, isn't it? People whose main diet consists of meat, dairy products, and the usual junk foods without any intake of fermented foods require special attention. Over the years in my clinical experience, these people who don't pay attention to the healthy intestinal environment and continue unhealthy diets are the folks most likely to lose energy and stamina and show more and more signs of disease as they age. The merit of daily consumption of fermented food goes further. Fermented foods are indispensable in replenishing enzymes. I'm going to read that again. Fermented foods are indispensable in replenishing enzymes, which are key to human health. The book, The Enzyme Factor, a previous book by Dr. Hiromi Shinya, explains why these enzymes are so important and introduces an enzyme-enhancing program that he calls the Shinya Biozyme, which includes diet, nutrition, and other lifestyle suggestions. I will explain the Shinya Biozyme in more detail in the second part of this book, but it will help you to understand the biology that makes the biozyme more powerful for your health. Briefly, enzymes are protein substances which are involved in all phases of our life activities. It is a common knowledge now that they are important in the digestion of foods, but they are also involved with breathing, metabolism, elimination, and detoxification. Enzymes serve as catalysts for the chemical reactions necessary for living organisms. Their importance may not be fully recognized in modern medicine and nutritional science. It is true, however, that no matter how many nutrients we get from foods, we would not be able to maintain our energy if we did not have sufficient enzymes in our body. This is why I call enzymes the source of life energy. We know that there are 3,000 to 5,000 known varieties of enzymes in the human body. Wow, who's counting? Now here's the crux of the microbe factor for your health. The majority of these enzymes are made by intestinal bacteria. When the intestinal environment is disturbed with the proliferation of so-called harmful bacteria, the growth of these vital enzymes are impaired. Fermented food contains large quantities of enzymes. Therefore, you will be supplementing the enzymes in your body by consuming such foods. The enzymes found in fermented foods are digested and absorbed in the body and broken down into peptids and amino acids. It is my theory, that Dr. Shinya's theory, that these are compounded again as the miracle source enzyme, which is the basic substance of other enzymes in our body. All the work within our intestines by bacteria, enzymes, and immune cells to maintain and nourish our health is linked very closely. This is why the key to vitality and head to toe health is to improve the intestinal environment. So important. Knowing this, I believe the role of fermented foods is greater than generally recognized. They promote overall health by adding beneficial bacteria to the intestines, boosting the immune system and making it less likely that we will need to take the extraordinary measure of killing of the bad bacteria with antibiotics in order to save the person's life. In our 21st century food production and distribution system, however, much of the traditional benefit of fermentation has been lost. Many of the fermented foods in supermarkets are fermented for a short time because they are mass produced. And in order to make up for this, various additives such as fermentation accelerators, synthetic preservatives, artificial colors, and chemical seasoning agents have been added. Also, as likely, pesticides and chemical fermentations have been used on the food crops, fertilizers, and more likely, pesticides and chemical fertilizers have been used on the food crops. Miso paste, or soy sauce mass producing, uses soybeans on which large amounts of pesticides have been sprayed and are fermented foods in name only. You cannot expect health benefits from such foods, and consumption of such foods on a daily basis may have an adverse effect on your body. Actually, good and bad, those value judgments we assign to microscopic organisms are misleading us. Bacteria is neither good or bad. They just are part of the natural world. Even those we call harmful will have some beneficial rules to play in certain circumstances. In making space for both good and bad to exist, we will be able to see how the function of our intestines conforms to the way of the natural world. Unlike bacteria, there is no classification of virus as beneficial or harmful. One may consider that all of these are harmful and that they are threatening the existence of human beings. However, if we simply regard them as bad, we will see no other solution but to find a way to destroy all viruses, as if nature itself were our enemy. We cannot find our way to health by trying to destroy whole categories of life. We have developed many medicines, such as antibiotics, in order to overcome diseases. However, we cannot say that this has improved the level of our overall health. Medicines that are chemically synthesized are foreign substances to our body, and therefore they will be in some way toxic. We expect to take medicines when we get sick, and we call ourselves cured when the symptoms are suppressed. Check that out. In approaching our health care in a way, we are not considering enough the negative effects these medicines can exert. Antibiotics, for example, destroy not only the targeted pathogens, but also